Welcome to Caleb Can't Read. I'm Jordan Rabel.
I'm Caleb Terrence.
You happy?
Yeah, actually, that's the most time.
Put your fucking hands down.
Okay.
Put your hands down.
I'm sorry.
We haven't redone a recording like this since Fart Slave.
Actually, yeah.
Don't think about it. Well, let's get started.
Since the
let's
Fart Slave incident.
Let's just go straight into
I'm
it.
mostly just fucking amazed that we haven't had the right error screen on this
It's
fucking
gonna happen
thing.
at the very end.
Or we'll just lose the entire fucking recording.
That's it, everyone. You're not getting this.
I'm still waiting for the big fucking goddamn it thing to happen.
What? The right error?
That we get all the way to the end and then we fucking plug it in and it's just like fucked.
Oh, fucking maybe. And then we're just going to have to pretend like we haven't heard this before. Just, ha ha, boy, that's a new joke I didn't hear 2 days ago.
No, we'll bring Sean in.
It's a good idea.
Mm-hmm.
He's just fucking working
came up with it.
He's just working at Plaid. We're just like, no, dude, lock up. Come on, let's go. We need you. Come on.
You can't tell people where he works. You can't tell all 50 listeners where Sean works.
People are coming from state to state to come hunt Sean down.
Honestly, with that voice, dude, maybe.
Give me your vocal cords.
That voice could trigger a stalker. Fuck. That sounds.
Yeah, but then they're gonna end up looking at him and like, really? Like,
no. Like I when I was listening to that, I was like, damn. I never thought about how smooth this was before.
I remember changing oil with a kid after you were after you retired.
I mean, we already said on the podcast that I got fired.
Yeah, it was
for
rough.
being a piece of shit.
It was rough, dude. Everyone came up to me for like consultation too. They were just like, they're like, "Hey, man, I'm really sorry to hear that Caleb got fired." And
Like
I'm
he's
just
still crashing on my couch all the time. Like,
it's like, well, I'm seeing him tonight. Like,
He's like-
he's probably gonna drop by anyway.
really sorry you got fired. I'm like, he's not.
Well, there was some kid with a very golden fucking voice. Like, he wasn't too soft on the eyes either. Like, he was, you know, he was a good looking kid.
You call
but
him the
here,
maiden.
the maiden. But no, I called him pubulus. But his call-in responses as we're fucking working was just ridiculous. The whole time it was just like,
Don't trail off. Nobody knows.
it
what
was
the fuck
just,
that
you
is.
know, open on Bay 9. Open on Bay 9. Just
Oh god.
it was like just walking around just jonesing was just the hardest thing.
So it just gives me a little tickle.
Well, let's get started, shall we?
Yeah, dude. What
All
was
right.
that?
John Stanislaus Joyce was born on the 4th of July, 1849 in Cork, Ireland, the only child to James and Ellen Joyce. Now lineage... Oh, wow. Now lineage was something...
Yeah, that's more natural.
Holy shit.
How long has it been since the last voice crack? Do you remember?
This morning, probably.
Oh, damn.
Yeah.
All right. Well,
I got a shitty voice. What do you want?
yeah, we're not.
It matches my face.
We're not.
It's
built
just
for
enough
this
to
at
crack a
all.
fucking mirror. Yeah, just, hey, welcome to Caleb Can't Read. Now, lineage was something always taught in the Joyce household, but ironically, we don't know too much about John's immediate family. John could tell you all about his stonemason ancestor from 1610, who helped build the walls along the roadways of the entirety of Ireland. But we don't know too much about his own parents, for instance. You always see those in like movies and shit. You know, whenever somebody pictures Ireland, there's like sheep up on a fucking hill and there's always like those stones.
A bunch of green shit and a bunch of cobblestone.
Yeah. Like cobblestone fucking like walls
Yeah.
that are like dick height, you know?
Yeah.
He did that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fun,
Now we know
fun fact.
we know John's father owned a salt and lime works, which gave them a handsome fortune, and we know John himself attended college in 1859 at just 10 years old because things were different back then. We also
Wait,
know
so he wasn't.
what?
What do you mean things were different back then? Didn't mean he was like really smart or anything back
No.
then. There were just 10-year-olds at college back then.
Yeah. Fuck it, man. There weren't trade schools, I don't think. So like you just kind of were like, look, we know what you're going to do. You're going to be a welder. Just go learn how to weld. Fuck your writing classes.
Oh, yeah, they
you
just
don't
give
need to
him
know
a
that. Yeah. What about child rights, mommy? Fucking what?
Just fucking 9-year-olds shingling roofs and shit.
Look, kid, if I don't have rights, you don't have rights. Get your ass to class.
2 incomes isn't going to cut it, buddy.
Yeah. We also know that after just a year of his father dying in 1866, James kept up his schooling for just about a year before deciding fuck it and moving to his sizable estate in 1867 at the age of 18. So now he's like just a fucking lord with this Salt and Lime Works big-ass house estate.
That was fast.
All right.
We're still talking about the same dude, right?
Yeah. God, I wish that was me.
I mean, yeah.
Unfortunately, John didn't stay there for very long. No, he decided Cork just wasn't his thing. He also developed a horrible spending habit in a fairly short amount of time, which also closed down his father's business. But he doesn't really mention that
We're going
part.
up, then we're going back down. Then we're going back up.
Who would have guessed that he would have spent like a fucking 18-year-old?
Yeah, right. Did you guys know about these places called strip clubs? This is amazing. Go, John!
So he abandoned what little wealth he had and moved to Dublin to start a series of odd jobs, the longest of which was as a secretary for a distillery and as a campaigner for the Liberal Party of the UK. When I say liberal, it actually has the opposite meaning over there, just FYI. Anyway, John met Mary Murray probably sometime during his campaigning in Dublin, and at the age of 30, and about 2 weeks before Mary's 20th birthday on May 5th, 1880, the two were wed. John and Mary somehow managed to abstain from having kids for a few years. I say this because from 1884 till 1892, they would have 10 children at the rate of almost one a year.
God. Oh, that poor lady. Oh, poor both of them. God, no sleep, man. God.
Have you heard of this new stereotype? No. Let's create it.
I'm out of sheep intestine. What? I'm out of sheep intestine.
You don't want to find out how they pull it out.
I remember the first 2 years.
Where's the New Zealander?
The first 2 years, they were just like, dude, I heard actually that it feels better if you bust in there. What? You want to try it?
You ever try a lambskin condom?
Oh my God, have you?
Yeah. They're not...
Why would you do that? That doesn't gross you the fuck out?
Of course it did, but I was like, this is luxury. Especially since I had to pay more for it. Dude, it was just a fucking condom. It was fucking stupid. Like, it was just dumb.
Dude.
What?
I don't know, something about that, man.
Yeah, that's fair. Well, anyway. So, they had 10 children at the rate of almost one a year. James in 1882, Mary and John Stanislaus Jr. in 1884, Charles in 1886, George in 1887, Eileen in 1888, May in 1889, Ava May in 1890, Florence in 1891, and finally Mabel in 1892. I think they were running out of names. They're like, this one is May. This one is Ava May.
I'm not going to remember any of that.
Don't worry about it.
Okay.
Because damn near certain that like Mary Joyce was just a slip and slide by that last one. But anyway, you can expect.
Oh yeah, aren't only like a third of them gonna make it through the gauntlet back then?
I mean, fucking pretty much, yeah.
Okay.
You can't expect a man to be a father to all of those children. So John only focused on one.
You can.
No.
If you got like an estate.
Look,
money,
who
you
did the research
totally
here?
can. That's why I'm here, Jordan, to call you on your bullshit.
You and I both
Yeah, that's why I'm
know
here.
about absentee fathers after one, so, you know.
I didn't have an absentee father. That's not how that
Oh, fuck,
works.
was it just me?
Yeah. You're alone and you should feel ashamed.
This whole,
I have a
this
wonderful
whole podcast is
relationship with
just
my
calling
father.
out for, Brennan, if you're out there, come home soon. Baby needs you.
But I thought I met your dad. Is that not your dad? Did you just pay a man to come to your wedding?
Just pay people to
You
show
just
up.
paid that was part of the wedding fees. You just paid other blonde white people to come in and pretend.
Your
they were
dad's
family.
Mexican? Yep. He didn't speak very good English either. Just don't talk to him. It's
Yep,
fine.
weird. Came out blonde haired, blue eyed.
So, John only focused on one child. His eldest, born February 2nd, 1882, and the subject of today's episode, James Augustine Aloysius Joyce. James Joyce.
James Joyce.
James Joyce. When James was still very young, about 5 years old, his father moved the family to a town called Bray, about 12 miles away from Dublin. This was so John could get further away from his still declining Salt and Lime Works and get closer to his real passion, politics. Well, this began a steady decline for the Joyce family, who in just 2 short years would hit fairly close to rock bottom.
Get it? Get it? Because it's the Salt and Lime.
First, I refuse to laugh at that.
Yeah,
First,
that was weak. I'm sorry.
little James was attacked by a random dog, leading to a lifelong fear. And his
Yeah,
grandmother... Yeah, you kind of know about that
I'm
one,
getting
don't
some
you?
flashbacks. No,
Their
it's
pupils dilated like hella.
the shittiest thing about that
About what,
situation-
dog fears?
No, because like
Or just dog attacks?
because there were fucking wild dog problems in Atlanta, really bad when I was growing up, right? And so now there are people that I'm around that think like, oh, dogs are a really good judge of character, and it's like, no, the dog is just picking up that I'm uncomfortable because I've been attacked by dogs. You asshole. Like, it also makes them more prone to nip at me because I'm like, what the fuck are you doing?
God, I'm really happy that Buster is so small. Otherwise, you never want to
I'd
show
just
up.
be like, get the fuck
It's
out
a
of here.
little ironic that
Like,
you got just a big-ass dog, too.
if people be like, oh, what, do you have a phobia of dogs? Like, it's not a phobia. It's a reasonable fear. Have you ever seen them rip something apart? It's terrifying.
Oh, look at this guy. He's got a phobia of mall shootings. It seems kind of likely.
It's like, this guy's scared of guns. Pussy. I don't know. I just waved it in his face and he ran off.
Well, not only his fear of dogs, but his grandmother just mentioned in passing one time that lightning was a sign of God's wrath. So now he had a lifelong fear of that, too. When James Joyce was 6 years old in 1888, he was sent away to a Jesuit boarding school. Now, his family couldn't really afford it, but whatever money they made, it either went to James's tuition or John's drinking. One day, John got upset over the Vatican siding with Britain that they should rule Ireland instead of the Irish. Noticing his father's ire, James wrote a little poem about how shitty the Vatican was. And John loved it so much, he sent it to the Vatican Library to catalog as a special little fuck you.
Put it in your library.
This little maneuver, on top of his alcoholism, did not really help John when it came to keeping his job in public office. Because remember, politics was the thing he wanted to do.
Yeah, that's more annihilation of bridges. Yeah.
In 1892, due to the cost of his ever-increasing addiction, John took James out of boarding school. Because if it's between one of your 10 children getting a decent education or being able to afford your bottle, the bottle's going to win every time. By the next year...
What?
Shh, let's take a moment to just kind of...
Let's think about that.
Never me. By the next year, John would lose his job in politics entirely, throwing the Joyce family into poverty. Now, poor as they were, and despite his past actions, it was still very important to
Don't
John.
send that letter. John, 10 kids. 10 kids, John.
It's just a poem about
No,
fucking
goddamn it,
the
I have
Pope.
a point to make.
It's funny. Poor as they were, and despite his past actions, it was still very important to John that James get a good education. It's not like public school would have really been a tragedy either, but John himself grew up privileged.
Public school is a fucking tragedy every time, bud.
Well, he grew up privileged himself, so he wanted his kids to get that same experience. But the thing about John is that, although he was a terrible spendthrift, he had a great personality. I mean, in his later life, he'd practically have a career as the happy-go-lucky town drunk that everybody loves. But who should he run into one day but a Jesuit teacher from a good Catholic school? And wouldn't you know it, John and this teacher got along famously. And by the end of their conversation just there on the street, the teacher agreed to take in James Joyce at Belvedere College for a lowered rate so John would be able to afford it. That's the power of the fucking... I almost said tongue. That's the power of the tongue.
That's the power of the tongue, baby. Just roll with it. Just let the spirit take you, brother.
Yeah, roll your tongue. And James was an excellent student, eventually graduating from University College Dublin in 1902 at the age of 20, studying English, French, and Italian. But that's not to say he mastered French and Italian. He did well enough to pass the classes, and thinking himself fluent because of this, moved his entire ass to Paris to go to medical school. Well, he struggled, to say the least. But every time he petitioned for his poverty-ridden family to send him more money, they just did it. Because John was all about his eldest son and his eldest son only. Whatever James wanted, John would make sure he'd get. His 9 other kids could go screw.
That's usually like... It's always the oldest.
I just think it's funny, too. Like, his dad doesn't even stop him from, like, all right, Dad, I barely passed, conversational French. I'm moving to Paris to go to medical school. Like, oh, you got it, boy. Go right ahead. Like he just doesn't give a fuck.
Just wasted.
I think maybe he cared more about like titleships than anybody really looking into their resume and looking up references, because that's what John was all about. He shut down that Lime Works. It ran itself.
I don't know, man. We don't need to put logic to this if he was that nor of an alcoholic.
Yeah, it's true.
He just did things.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing. Like he himself has his own whole Wikipedia page where it's basically like, yeah, town just fed him like a stray dog in Greece. I didn't give a fuck. Like, it's just like John's fucking really hungover. You want to give him some like eggs and bacon? Like, yeah, come on in, John. You know, like they didn't care. That's the fucking life.
That's the life.
That's the fucking life. And in time, between the alcoholism and the reckless spending of money, James would end up just like his father. Now, James was in Paris for medical school and not doing particularly well, but he was there for only a few months before he got a telegram from back home which read, "Mother dying, come home, father." Just, I mean, they pay by the word, you know, or by the letter, I mean. So, fuck it. You know?
No, or he was just drunk, like, okay, write this down. Mother, as he's falling over, mother dying, come back home.
John, he's pooping. God damn it, John.
Do you think an alcoholic would be sober for that event?
At least, like,
he's like, no, I want to be respectful.
He's like, we could only like fucking pay for abbreviations, right? Like, James just opens a letter. What the fuck does MDCHF mean? Like, fuck, what did that mean? Shit. Well, just a little while after his return to Dublin, on August 13th, 1903, James Joyce's mother, Mary, passed away from cancer. In her final moments, she asked James to go back to church, which he had long since abandoned as an atheist. On her deathbed, to his dying mother, James told her,
Totally,
no.
Mom. Totally, Mom.
No,
Absolutely.
He said no.
That's
no matter
so
how
mean.
much
You could just tell her yes
exactly.
and then not.
Yeah, no matter how much she pleaded. As she was actively dying, drawing her last few breaths, the whole family kneeled around her bed
old
and
is he
prayed.
at this point?
Old enough to know better. He's 20, I guess, or 21. Let's see, 1902 and 1903. So, yeah, he's 21. He knows better. I mean, give me a fucking break. Here's the thing, though.
What good is your alcoholic father for if not to smack you when you do shit like that?
As the whole family kneels and prays as she's actively dying, James Joyce and his younger brother Stanislaus stay standing up. They're like, just, no. Not gonna do it. Like,
No.
like, I get that. You're an atheist because you went to Catholic school. I get it. You know, but like, dude, just fucking be respectful for fuck's sake. Like, that's so fucking mean.
Like, no. We're not starting a holy war right now, man. We're just letting your mom down peacefully, okay? Just fucking say yes for a second and pray. Like,
well, son, we're gonna have you be the only pallbearer so that you can let your mom down one last time. Like, Jesus Christ, dude. Like, well, after his wife's death, John essentially became the 11th child at home. But before she passed away, Mary had her eldest daughter, also named Mary, promise to take care of the children, knowing John would be too drunk to do anything. And she did. At just 19 years old, Mary played mother to the entire household, not just to her younger siblings, but to her own father as well. And James was quickly becoming just like Dad, which at this point, James barely helped scrape cash together with the job as a book reviewer. About a year after his mother's death in 1904, she died in 1903, but this is 1904. James tried to publish a story of his own that was more or less a book on the philosophy of art called A Portrait of the Artist. The writing style moved away from the romantic style of writing that was popular during that time. Instead, it was something modern, something new. But because it was so different, it also meant it was a risk. No one wanted it. As one publisher told him, I can't print what I can't understand.
Yes, you can. Just push the button.
You want me to pay you?
Like, that's not how this machine works. I could draw a dick and you could run it through there. What are you talking about?
Do it.
Okay, I'm game.
Portrait of the Artist. It's just dick drawings. It was revolutionary.
Portrait of the fartist.
So James decided to make a story a little bit closer to the experiences of his own life. Something a little less philosophical and more autobiographical. In time, a portrait of the artist eventually became Stephen Hero, a work James Joyce would focus on for years.
Fucking jump. You want to explain that?
I'll get to it. A work James Joyce would focus on for years before ultimately abandoning the project. But it wasn't so much the difficulty of writing a novel that made James toss the novel aside. No, it was because he met a woman.
A real lady.
Yeah. But, alright, I'm going to start off this sentence with her name. I want you to know, looking at pictures of her, she's a pretty lady.
I'm ready.
Nora Barnacle.
Oh, that's not bad.
Barnacle?
It's pretty funny, but I mean, it's silly, but it's not like...
That sounds like fucking like...
I was up here, man.
That sounds like if Mr. Krabs were a woman. Just like...
You expect me to giggle at that after last episode there was a guy named Anus. We started it off with a dude named Pubulus or Pubulus. It's
Pubulus.
The tolerance for that is up here right now.
Well, fuck me then. Nora Barnacle was born March 21st, 1884 in Galway, Ireland. Her mother was a dressmaker and her father was a illiterate baker, which would explain why on her birth certificate her name is spelled Norah.
Irish dads.
Illiterate and drunk. Her birth certificate named her Norah instead of just Nora. He just added an extra letter.
Thanks for that fucking detail, bud. Riveting.
The date was marked March 22nd instead of March 21st. Her family was poor, but not like the Joyces, who were still able to cater to James up until this point. I mean, she was born in essentially a homeless shelter. She was finished with school by the time she was 12 because, fuck, them's an extra set of working hands. It was also when she was 12 years old that her parents separated due to her father's alcoholism, and she and her mom had to move in with an uncle. Soon, Nora fell in love with a boy, who shortly thereafter died of typhoid. But it's okay, because not long after that, she fell in love with another boy, who also died of typhoid.
Damn.
This gave Nora the nickname Man Killer by the other kids. Between Maiden and Man Killer.
That's rough.
Yeah, these kids are harsh, dude.
Just like, wow, y'all been calling me Man Killer? Really, guys?
You know, it's about another 100 years before that becomes cool from a hit single. You do realize that. It was in 1903, at the age of 19, that Nora was asked to a local dance by Willie Mulvey.
Did he also die of typhoid? Skipsies to the part where he dies, or not?
Actually, no.
Okay.
But, you see, Nora and her friends loved to dance, but you couldn't just go to a dance if you didn't bring a boy. So, Nora said yes. And what a magical night for Nora it was.
Were they doing that, like, silly white people leg-moving thing?
Leg-moving thing?
Like,
with the stanky leg?
Like the river... Exactly. You know?
Oh, river dancing?
Like river dancing, stanky leg.
River dancing with the stanky leg. Just twirling all over that fucking dance floor.
God, that shit's funny looking.
Well, it was a great night for her at the very least. She saw her friends. Willie didn't die. It was just all so special. However, when she got home, her uncle learned just who it was she went to the dance with. You see, Nora and her family were Catholics, but Willie Mulvey, that there motherfucker, was a Protestant. To teach her a lesson, Nora's uncle did what any of us would do. He pulled a branch off a thorn bush outside and beat the fucking shit out of her.
Whoa!
And Nora, not appreciating her uncle's point of view...
I'm just surprised they didn't already have a dedicated switch. That's what that noise was for.
Where is it? I'm gonna find it! Well, not enjoying her...
Cherry.
Not quite appreciating her uncle's point of view, she ran away to Dublin to be a maid at the Finnis Hotel. Now, for whatever reason, James Joyce just happened to be in Dublin at the same time, and it was there that he was struck by Nora's beauty.
Oh, so she just didn't get to see dude again because she went home and got beat the fuck up?
Yeah.
Oh, man, that fucking sucks.
She ran away at 19, yeah.
Damn, alright. Anyway, proceed.
I mean, that's middle-aged,
I got nothing. Like,
yeah.
like...
Well, so he sees Nora at the Finnis Hotel, and he asks her out on a date. And on June 16th, 1904, 6 days after their meeting, James and Nora went on that date. When they first met the week prior, Nora thought James was a Swedish sailor, because he was in a striped shirt and was wearing moccasins. So she was quick to...
Because he was dressed like a Swedish sailor.
Yeah, so she was quick to say yes, but she quickly found out that he was not a sailor and just like dressing like a hipster. Now, being a city boy and a country gal, they
Bit of
had
a red flag.
They had wildly different views on all subjects.
Wait. If he was dressed that similar as a sailor, like, that's actually as big of a red flag as somebody like in military fatigues now macking on somebody, and then you find out that they're not, right?
I mean,
that's kind of weird.
Yeah.
Especially,
it's not my fault that you were tricked by me. I just happen to like camouflage. Well, you're not in the 8th grade, so now you're weird.
Like, what? You just like the patches too, man?
Why do you have a fucking airborne tattoo? That's weird.
What the fuck is this?
It's not even around anymore, is it? This isn't Band of Brothers.
No, Jack. That's a joke one. That's SEAL Team Dicks. It's funny.
Well, they didn't really seem like they were getting along at all, but for whatever reason, the date was still a huge success. At the end of the date, for a job well done, James was rewarded with a hand job. I'm serious.
Wait.
That is...
Why do you even know that?
That is public record.
It's public record.
He is very proud of getting that handy.
That's probably one of the first public record handies.
Oh, fuck, it might be.
That's kind of amazing.
Besides, like, old Roman graffiti, yeah, that was probably just
but
like...
that's all dudes banging.
Yeah. So?
This is the first straight hand job on record. God, what a bummer a hand job is. That's why nobody bothers writing.
She just reached through a hole in the sheets. It's fine. It's practically like nothing.
Dude, it's not acceptable. It's not acceptable. A hand job is not acceptable.
Not acceptable?
No. Okay, let me explain this to you.
Yeah, please.
Okay, so the hand job, I've spent my entire life beating my dick, right? I've got
literally your whole life. You just told me you had to go poop before this, and I know you weren't.
Yeah, exactly. I'm very comfortable in your home. But
great.
No, okay. I spent my entire life beating my dick, okay? I've got it down. All right, nobody works this thing like me. You think this fucking woman is going to reach her hand over and fucking just jump on, magically, like she knows what the fuck she's doing? No, she's going to act like she's trying to pull start me, and it sucks.
Just yank on it like you're starting a lawnmower.
Oh, I read this in a Cosmo, and it hurts, dude.
They said if I put Pop Rocks in my mouth, oh, good, you got a grating sensation in there?
The only way
Great,
a hand job could be good is if you're like a fucking teenager, and then you're just so excited that a woman's touching your penis, actually.
Yeah, I mean, it might pop off just for that reason alone. Boy, I guess you're really good at this.
Be like, how about just a hand job? How about we just cuddle? Actually, like, that's fine.
I'll let you look at it if you want, if that's what your thing is, but there's no point in you touching it. Let's not cause abrasions here.
Whoa. I'll just leave for a moment.
Just a moment. How you give Indian rug burns. Okay, now the thing is...
Sorry.
James was the only member of his family that was particularly fond of his father. But John, well, yes, he was the town drunk. He was a friendly drunk. People didn't mind when he stumbled into their establishment. And while this is just my opinion, I feel like James really wanted to emulate his father. So he started getting a reputation, but as an alcoholic, because a drunk is fun, and James was an insufferable ass when he drank. Which isn't too surprising. The guy who refused to pray in front of his dying mother, that sounds like a fucking neckbeard to me. So James quickly got a reputation for being... Yeah. So James quickly got a reputation for being a horrible alcoholic around town. Got into arguments and fistfights so often that he eventually had to stay with an acquaintance of his on the edge of town.
So like the opposite kind of drunk of his dad, who seemed like he was really a social butterfly when he was drunk.
Yeah, like you give that guy a drink and he's going to be like, okay, so chicken crosses the road, right? And we're all like, oh, fucking, what did this chicken fuck next? Like, oh, here comes John with his fucking chicken joke.
And meanwhile, his son is just like
his son's
an angry, yelling piece of shit.
Just like, I don't believe that story. That sounds stupid.
God,
yeah, well, he started spending his time with a friend who lived on the edge of town because he knew no one would look for him there. Like, that's too far out of the city limits, basically. Oh, damn, right. Yeah.
Well, everybody must have been ready to kick his
ass.
Yes. Like
he's a dick.
Yeah, because that's the fucking thing, man. If you fuck up enough when you're drunk, that's not going to be a good enough excuse. You're going to be like, I'm sorry, I was drunk. And they're going to be like, you're always drunk, motherfucker. That's you.
Yeah.
All right?
You're an alcoholic.
Yeah, no.
You're just-
that is your state, homie.
If you're cranky when you're not drinking and then you drink and you're still an asshole, you're just a dick.
That's something my uncle told me. Is he's just like, I have no fucking idea how anyone could drink this and then get mad. Like,
I mean, my only thought is if people were just like, I don't know, it's not a situation that they want to be in and they feel like people are bringing it down. Like, no, man, this should be a fucking party and you're not acting like this is a fucking party right now. Like, why won't you fucking drink with me, man? You know, like,
oh, God. Oh, Jesus.
yeah, it's scary drinking around my brother.
I've ditched people like that before. I always give a disclaimer. It's like, remember, no matter how good of friends we are, if you start acting a fool and then you look around to see who has your back, I'm not going to be there.
If anything, you'll punch him in the face and run to a U.S. Bank parking lot. Now, Jordan, come get me. Jordan! Now, you see, this acquaintance he lived with on the edge of town, he lived in what's called a Martello Tower, basically a castle turret on the beach. You see those old things of, like, by the seasides of castles and shit, there's, like, those big towers that kind of have, like, that tooth-looking grating on the top.
Yeah, they all got the...
Yeah.
Yeah, there's fucking castles, like, every block and
well,
shit.
basically,
like...
it's no longer, like, a piece of castle that they're using, so they just let people live in there. Like...
Sick.
Yeah, right?
I bet back then they didn't even think it was cool, so the rent was low.
Right, yeah. No, it acted as a military fortification back in the day, but not needing it now. The government just sort of rented it out as an apartment
Turns
for cheap.
out, does not beat cannons. So if you guys just want to live in here...
There's still no glass on these windows, dude. It's cold as fuck. We're in Ireland.
Have some fucking plywood. We're in Ireland.
Well, after just 6 days, the acquaintance couldn't take any more of James Joyce's bullshit and tried to shoot James in the head during an argument in the middle of the night. You ever been that bad?
Night number 6. I am tired, James.
We have talked about
This is your last warning.
Me and a buddy have talked about putting out a risk board, inviting some friends over, and me and him are the only ones that know that gun isn't loaded. We put it in the middle until everyone's loaded, see how many turns it takes before someone tries to pull the trigger.
If I walk into a party and there's a gun on the table, I'm walking out. Like,
what are you talking about? That's what a party is. Like,
Jesus.
I mean, oh shit, man! Can you imagine?
You're
that?
just filtering through the dumb fuck friends.
No,
at that
dude.
point.
Can you
Like-
imagine that right now? I want you to think about that. How many parties have you been to where you didn't know that there was a gun and somebody had one?
I mean, pretty much any party where, I mean, especially now, like any party in a house, there is a gun in the house somewhere.
I think people
Especially
have been
after
bringing them to
2020.
apartments and shit. Oh man,
And there's a bunch of people
I don't
with
wanna think about
concealed
it.
carry, especially when you get out of Portland.
people with concealed carry never want to conceal it, though. You know,
Yeah, they always project it with the fucking with the thin blue line shirts
yeah,
and shit.
they're always making sure to wear a tight shirt so that it's just
You can get an eye
you
for it,
see
like
the
you can
fucking handle.
see the outline of the extra Glock mags in the pockets of the cargo pants.
yeah, exactly.
Like you're like, yeah, that guy's packing.
Well, luckily the bullet landed just above James's head. So he ran off and left all of his shit behind and had a friend go back and pack his shit for him the next day. Like, hey, I got a friend who's got a gun. You go pack it. So James had to walk 8 miles that night to get to a relative's couch. Coincidentally, it wasn't long after this incident before James and Nora said, man, fuck Dublin, and decided to move to Switzerland instead.
It's not going to fix it if you're the problem.
Turns out that's going to be true. Now, James's sister Mary thought moving to the continent was a pretty bad idea, partly because James and Nora had proved that they both had trouble surviving as adults in the real world. And if they were in another country,
I feel it.
they wouldn't have anyone come to their rescue. But James and Nora were adamant that they'd be fine in James Joyce's life.
One second.
What?
Sugar. Oh, I got an itch. Oh, yes.
Oh, you're fine.
Ah.
Now,
No, you take the headphones off, and then if you talk, it turns into a crazy echoing situation.
well, so they thought that they were
Sorry.
going to be fine, partly because James's brother Stanislaus would be coming with them as like a third wheel. This would actually be a theme
I'm
in his
bringing-
life, though.
Another drunk Irishman, don't worry.
Yeah, so James would offer room and board for a sibling of his, and would like once they're there, they would find out they're essentially going to be his and Nora's servant, and then they get sick of taking care of him and Nora. And as one sibling would move out, another one would move in. I mean, he had like a dozen siblings to go through, so he'd get servitude for most of his life. And his brother Stanislaus stayed with him for 4 years. And although Mary thought James and Nora shouldn't go, Mary still had to arrange everything for them. The boat ride, their lodgings, everything. Not only that, but Nora...
Damn, this motherfucker better be making bank.
I mean, eventually he writes the best story ever, but like, you know.
Okay, all right.
Well, not only that, but Nora, before their trip, asked Mary if she wanted to spend just a little girl time with her and help her pick out a new wardrobe. And when she picked everything out, Nora was just like, "Oh, Mary, be a dear and get the bill, would you?"
Yeah, these people suck.
Yeah. So it was in 1904 that James, Nora, and Stanislaus moved away to Zurich, Switzerland. James and Stanislaus would make their living teaching English at a language school. But if you'll remember, James does not have a knack for languages. He basically lied his way into getting a teaching position alongside his brother, who was much more competent. The school
how competent do you have to be? Like, what grade is he teaching?
I mean, they're in Switzerland, so they have to know the Swiss language, at the very least, to be able to teach English.
Yeah,
you know?
I mean, you're assuming whoever hired them gave a fuck enough about the topic to care. Like...
Right. Well, I mean, to at least hold a conversation. I have a feeling like, there's Stanislaus at the meeting with the principal or something, and he's carrying the whole thing in the Swiss language, and he's just like, and my brother's very good as well. And he's just there next to him, like, getting nudged, and he's like, "Da," you know, like, he has no fucking idea. Well, the school...
He knows Russian too. Don't worry about it.
The school pretty quickly learned that they fucked up hiring James and was like, "Hey, how do you feel if we transferred you to another country?" So the school moved James and Nora out.
"We're transferring you to Ireland.
Trieste, Italy, where they'd stay for the next decade.
Oh, we're back to the Italians."
And unfortunately for Stanislaus, he would have to follow, because these guys can't take care of themselves. Now, James was a lot like his father.
It's a traveling alcoholic circus of codependency.
Yeah, and he was a lot more like his father in more ways than one.
This is reading like some Always Sunny shit for the past like 10 minutes, dude. Like...
He wasn't just fond of booze, but he also knew how to really throw his fucking money away, too. As the Joyces and Nora bounced around Europe for work, it was always Stanislaus that had to get the other two out of financial trouble. And the whole time, Stanislaus kept a diary detailing his brother's constant foolishness, where James would often tout that due to his higher education, he was destined for literary greatness. Meanwhile, Stanislaus...
So cute when people think that.
Stanislaus was the one actually putting forward the fucking effort to be a great teacher. He was the one bringing home the cash, not James. And as his diary would detail, Nora and James were constantly arguing with Stanislaus over whatever they could. But worried for his brother's safety, Stanislaus would live with James and Nora until about 1908 before getting sick of their shit and moving back home. But it was during this time in Trieste that James decided to essentially abandon his novel Stephen Hero, because writing a whole-ass novel is hard. But what isn't as difficult are short stories. And it was here that his novel Stephen Hero would be worked on kind of in the background, but changing the title, calling it A Portrait of the Artist as a Young Man. And instead of having a story about some artist he admired, why not have a thinly veiled autobiography instead? So you could talk about the number one artist, baby. But we'll get into that later. Right now, James Joyce has begun work on his collection of short stories, and it was while James Joyce whittled away at these short stories in Trieste that on June 27th, 1905, Nora gave birth to a son, George, but was often called Giorgio.
That's actually such an impressive run for people with such poor judgment that they managed to not have a kid that long.
Yeah. I also do like, though, that, like, oh, his name is George. We're in Italy. Giorgio! Like
Giorgio!
And a short while later, they also had a daughter,
Giorgio,
Lucia. Is it Lucia or Lucia? Oh, I'm gonna go with Lucia.
Is it a lady?
Yeah.
I think it's Lucia.
Fuck, it probably is.
Yeah.
Well, a daughter,
No,
Lucia.
Take your hand like this. Shake it around. How does it feel?
Lucia.
Now say the other one.
All right. Lucia.
Does it feel right?
I don't know.
Yeah, no.
I don't
it's
know.
Lucia.
Okay. Well, they gave birth to their daughter, Lucia, on July 26, 1907. Trying to go the classic Irish Catholic route, they tried for a third child, leading to a miscarriage in 1908, which pretty much stopped them from ever trying again.
Ooh, yeah.
It was the next year, in 1909, at the age of 27, that James Joyce would return to Dublin to see his father, bringing with him his 2-year-old son, Giorgio, and the manuscript for his collection of short stories while looking for a publisher. This collection he would call Dubliners. Now, the way things were done back then is if you had a work in progress, you would send in a chapter here or there to a literary magazine, or in this case, a short story or two, basically to work as advertising for your collection when it finally comes out, like as a whole, right? Well, a few of these stories from Dubliners got published in the papers too. However, it wasn't long before people started writing into the editorials to complain about Joyce's writings before the papers stopped publishing his work altogether. You see, Joyce's writings can still be a bit of a shock today, but back then it was just plain criminal. For instance, Joyce's first publisher, a man named George William Russell, wanted to publish something by Joyce because that was his fucking job, you know? And he saw that Joyce could write, but he practically had to beg Joyce in a letter to just write something fucking normal so he could get it published. And so on August 13th, 1904, The Sisters was finally published in a paper called The Irish Homestead. Overall, not a bad story. It's about a boy and his aunt visiting the home of a recently deceased priest and meeting the priest's sisters. That's pretty much it.
That sounds pretty normal.
Yeah, however...
Wait, is there a way to know what shit got rejected? Does that come up later? Because that sounds interesting.
He pretty much gets them all published anyway.
Oh, sick. All right. I can't fucking wait.
So here's the thing about this story, though, because he, instead
Alcoholic
of just...
weird ravings.
Well, just instead of being, like, upfront about it, he kind of hints at the craziness. So, like, as little as Joyce attended medical school in Paris, he was able to accurately describe the last days of the priest, although an unnamed disease in the story as having the symptoms of syphilis. And of course, this being 1904, it was common that readers knew someone who had it. So it was pretty quickly revealed.
From fucking, right?
Yeah, so it was pretty quickly revealed that this priest in the story died from an STD.
Got him!
And Joyce was off to a bad start already. And most of the stories in Dubliners are like this, where there's no...
Oh, that's so much worse than now, too, because, like, he had to have, like, gone the whole time, like, long printing press. It's not like he just, like, hit publish.
Yeah.
And then was like, oh, wait, no, I get it! Like, and then could reel it back in, but it was still out there. It's like, no, it's been... You had a while to not get that.
Well, I mean, it's like his publisher's just like, James, what are the symptoms for? Tuberculosis. Oh, okay. Huh. Your penis, huh?
I trust you, drunk Irish stranger.
Well, a lot of his stories in Dubliners are like this, too, though, where there's, like, no real action happening in the story itself, but there's always something obscene happening in the background if you know where to look. For instance, there's a story about these two kids just walking around town, but suddenly they come across this drunk guy that wants to talk to them. Quote, after a long while, his monologue paused. He stood up slowly, saying that he had to leave us for a minute or so, a few minutes, and without changing the direction of my gaze, I saw him walking slowly away from us towards the near end of the field. We remained silent when he had gone, and after a silence of a few minutes, I heard Mahoney claim, I say, look what he's doing. As I neither answered nor raised my eyes, Mahoney exclaimed again,
Is that your
I
Irish
say,
accent?
He's a queer old josser. Don't worry about it. I don't know accents. But what was the old man
You know
doing?
the difference between Irish and English accent. If you can't do the Irish accent, just
Look,
don't do it.
According to the English at this point in time, they're the same thing. Don't question
I don't
it.
know if it would change that much in just like 100 years, man.
Oh, I say, look what he's doing. I say, he's a queer old josser.
No. I didn't
That's
say
more
make me cringe. I said just do it normal.
Okay. Well, what do you think the old man was doing?
Take a piss.
Nope, he took a break talking to the kids to go jerk off behind a wall.
2 minutes? Yeah, that's a seasoned beat. That's the beat of a man who leaves randomly and it's just like, hang on, I gotta take care of something.
Yeah, I don't need any tabs open. I just got my imagination and a purpose. And I don't think Joyce was necessarily doing all this for shock value, though. The world really is a messy and scary place.
How do you know from what's written that he's beating off and not taking a piss?
Oh, he talks about it.
Oh,
He's
okay.
just like, yeah, that man was beaten off. Like, I think
It's such a bad joke. Like, oh, you thought he was peeing, but he's beating off. Like, what? What, man?
Well, I think he was adding a sense of realism that nobody wanted to see. I mean, it was real enough that Joyce was naming real locations in his stories, like street names and businesses that actually existed, and characters were bringing up real political issues of the day. A bit heavy-handed, yes, but still real. By the way, I have to point out that my favorite story in Dubliners is this one called Grace, and ultimately it's about the friends of this alcoholic giving him an intervention and trying to get him to go on a Catholic retreat with them. But the story starts off with the main character like blacked out drunk at the bottom of the staircase in a pub, and everyone's treating it like a murder mystery, trying to figure out whose friend this is. Like a bunch of drunks are just going through his pockets looking for clues and shit to know who to give them to.
No, we're looking for clues.
I just love it though. They're just like, look at the tags. Oh, Johnson Street. Oh, he must be from a friend of the Johnsons. So anyway, it's by far the most important tale in Dubliners is the last story in the collection. Titled The Dead, it's about a man named Gabriel Conroy going to a Christmas party with his wife that his two aunts throw every year. This year, Gabriel has been asked to give a speech, but you see, him being a teacher and a book reviewer, much like Joyce was in real life at the time, fears that some of his scholarly references will go over the audience's heads. Well, throughout the night, Gabriel has to deal with constant interactions that throw him off his game, like a family friend who's gotten too drunk when it's not that kind of party. Caleb?
Don't look at me.
Or a lady who tells Gabriel that the books he's been favorably reviewing are...
Every party is that kind of party. Call it something different.
Don't call it a party. It's a get-together. Or
Or just say, hey, do you want to come over for some lame bullshit? Just tell me ahead of time.
You're going to drink beforehand. That's some lame bullshit. I better get drunk before I show up. Or this lady who tells Gabriel that the books he's been favorably reviewing are all a little too pro-British for her taste. And even goes so far as to call Gabriel a West Briton. That bitch. But regardless of all this, Gabriel still does a great job delivering his speech, and everyone loves it. As Gabriel gets ready to leave, he sees his wife staring off into space as someone in a bedroom nearby drunkenly sings the Lass of Aughrim. Later that night, Gabriel tries putting the moves on his wife, who just kind of pushes him away. He asks what's wrong, and she says that song, the Lass of Aughrim, she was in love with a boy in her youth.
Well, I'm married, so that's inappropriate.
Can't leave any hickeys or my boyfriend will see. She was in love with a boy in her youth who used to sing that song to her. And although he was ill, he would still insist on walking to her home through the rain and snow to see her. She believes it was his insistence that led to his death. As she finishes her tale, she falls asleep, leading to Gabriel to ponder how he's never heard her talk of this before. But he then reflects on...
Because it's not fun to talk about, homie. It's not complicated. I wonder why this person never told me about their past trauma.
He reflects on how many dead people everyone knows, and how that's shaped their lives and their futures, and that he, too, will just one day be somebody's memory. The closing line of the story reads, quote, "His soul swooned slowly as he heard the snow falling faintly through the universe and faintly falling, like the descent of their last end upon all the living and the dead." The end. It's good writing.
Okay, I like it. It sounds nice.
Now, as mentioned before, publishers had a major issue with Dubliners, and Joyce would be at constant war with them. He was not willing to compromise his vision for the sake of getting his collection published. But in 1909, after 4 years of searching, Joyce finally found someone who agreed to publish Dubliners in its entirety. In reality, the publisher didn't fucking read it until the first issues were already being printed. And realizing his own mistake, stopped the presses and told Joyce he was going to sue him for costs incurred from printing the first copies. Well, Joyce told the publisher to just hang tight while he goes over there to smooth things over, okay? But when Joyce arrived at the printing press, the printed copies of Dubliners were already being burned.
Damn.
You can't mention jerking off! It's 1909!
But no one here jerks off. No one here jerks off. We don't talk about the...
His wife's just in the background, just like arms crossed, staring at him. I've never even heard of such a thing.
I mean, weren't they living in places like nobody, like back then people didn't, they had more like shared living situations, right? Like things weren't as walled off with like everybody having a separate room.
Yeah.
Or was that like before?
You know,
before
I'm
that?
not
So
totally sure, but
it's
I
really
think that may have
hilarious.
been like honestly street by street.
Like,
really.
I feel like a lot of fucking places, like, there's probably just, like, a curtain or a blanket, if you're lucky, in front of your parents' fucking
fuck
bed.
Me.
So,
Oh
like,
my
as
God.
far as, like, spanking goes, like, they're throwing a tantrum about it, and then everybody's just looking at them like, homie, we watch you beat it. Like, homie,
It's like
you're,
that.
you're one shot a day at least.
It's
pull
like that-
start in the morning.
That scene in The Witch when the parents are talking about what to do about their like shitty land or something like that, and the kids are in their room upstairs and they're just watching them through the floorboards. Like,
Like if I can't see him,
now remember, in the midst of
Dad,
Joyce's,
we can all hear the.
the raccoons are back. Now remember, in the midst of Joyce's ongoing battle to get Dubliners published, he was working on Stephen Hero, or as he was calling it now, A Portrait of the Artist as a Young Man. In 1911, facing another rejection for Dubliners, James Joyce hucked all 914 pages of the book into the fucking fireplace, while his sister Eileen quickly fished the pages out, because at this point it was his sister Eileen's turn to be his and Nora's servant and, you know, support them financially.
Nice.
Yeah,
Nice.
good rotation.
Good stepping up.
And by all means, Joyce went fucking crazy trying to write Portrait of the Artist. He was starting to blend his drafts together, integrating his diary from living in Trieste. He even took old philosophy papers he'd written and crammed them in there. He was going fucking nuts. But it was because of this mental battle with himself that this was the beginning of James Joyce's signature stream of consciousness writing that he would later be known for. Anyway, from the time James Joyce first published to get, first tried to get take two. Anyway, from the time James Joyce first tried to get Dubliners published in 1905 until 1914, he had submitted the story to 15 different publishers, all refusing to print. The gold medal for longest combatant against Joyce was a publisher named Grant Richards, who fought Joyce for 3 years, mainly on a story called Two Gallants, which is pretty much just a story. It's no, gallants, not gallants. And here's the tale, 2 gallons. Come, thank you. No, it's pretty much just a story about 2 guys talking about wanting to get laid before finally giving up and going home. Like, that's all it was. Yeah, but it's 19...
That's a little too real.
It's, yeah, well... Right, exactly. All of his stories are, because they're not peppy. They're always like, they always kind of end on a down note where it's just like the alcoholic who they're trying to figure out like whose friend it is and everything. The story ends with his friends wanting him to go to a retreat and he doesn't go. Like that's just it. Like, no, there isn't going to be a happy ending here. You don't go to retreats typically. Fuck you. I'm going to keep going because I don't have a problem. Nicole.
Whoa, brother. You go do stuff all the time.
Anyway, in the end, Joyce went back to Grant Richards like, come on, just print it. It's been 9 fucking years. And Grant was just like, all right. When it was finally released on June 15th, 1914, the book was received with very little fanfare. But the critics had to agree. This was something new. And small as it may have been, James Joyce got himself a little following in literary circles, seeing what he'd do next. It was what?
Critics agree. It's new.
When asked if it's there, the critics agreed. Yeah.
It's just funny seeing the little quotations like, it's new.
You ever see those old movie posters like from the like 2000s where it was like, Jeremy from MySpace says?
Anyway, sorry for interrupting you.
Well, even though Dubliners finally got released, Joyce was still always broke, but somehow he was also always spending money. He did this by masterfully knowing when to borrow and when to pay a person back through someone else's loan. Did you ever see Uncut Gems?
No.
All right, well, it was basically the same concept there. Yeah, you might be broke, but you technically have all these diamonds and shit, but those diamonds and shit are on loan. But if you sell them to somebody and you get a really good deal, maybe you can pay back a little bit and say, hey, sorry, I sold your diamonds, but like, it's a good movie. Anyway.
Why would you?
What? That's just basically what he was doing.
Why would you continue with that analogy if I haven't seen the movie? What am I going to do except stare at you?
You're not the only listener.
Yeah, all right. Yeah, but then if the listener has seen it.
And then they said, oh shit, they mentioned Adam Sandler, time to turn it off. There goes all the money I was about to give him.
A damn Sandler.
Me, the CEO of Slim Jims.
That's So you want to get sponsored by?
Fucking why not? I'll take a lifetime supply of
Slim
Slim Jims.
Jims.
Goddamn right. Man, I don't know if they still make them, but one time I was drunk in a 7-Eleven. I saw that they had like taco flavored Slim Jims, and I was like, this is it. This is the fucking future, boys.
This is the height of luxury.
Like, I get hit by a car tomorrow, and I'm not even going to care. Just bury me with taco flavored
This is
Slim
the
Jims.
best part of the road trip right here.
In 1913, Joyce was recommended to send what he had for Portrait of the Artist to fellow poet Ezra Pound, a man who was extremely influential to some of the 20th century's earliest writers. People like Hemingway and T.S. Eliot all saw Ezra Pound as a huge influence, before everyone denied having ever met him once the 1940s rolled around and Ezra became a huge Hitler fan
Whoa.
and close collaborator with Mussolini.
His name was Ezra Pound, though?
Yeah.
That's a really good porn name.
Man, I could just imagine like opening up Pornhub and somebody's just got like this, my name's Ezra Pound, and like just
Nobody
commenting,
understands that that's
just
a Nazi
commenting
thing.
like, boy, that's actually a really good literary reference, and they're just like, thank you.
Troubling.
You know he was a Nazi, right? Yes.
Yes, I too am a Nazi. You can't see it because I don't spread my cheeks a lot, but I got a swastika right on my cornhole. Like,
look, man, I'm not usually down with swastika tattoos, but if you want to have it right on the beehole, go for it. Like that's every shit you have shits through. Like,
is there any beehole tattoo that isn't funny?
no.
Try to think. I don't know if there's anything you could get on your asshole that wouldn't be funny. I mean, I'm fucking brainstorm.
I'm willing
for a
to
second.
bet you
Is
that
there anything too far?
I am willing to bet you that there is, and that we'll find it very fast. But we're not going to
Isn't
do
that
it right now.
amazing about assholes? That assholes are so funny they can overpower the shittiness of like any similar picture.
The earliest graffitis that they found in like Pompeii and shit were just like your mom jokes and fart jokes. And
Those
dick
aren't
jokes.
stars.
Because they fucking because that never goes out of style. Like literally any major conference or something, somebody farts, boom. That's comedy
Fucking
gold. Anyway, it was Ezra Pound who helped guide James Joyce into finally getting Portrait of the Artist published. In fact, Ezra loved it so much, he managed to get the story published in 25 installments in a British magazine called The Egoist, over a period of 2 years from 1914 to 1915. Like, beginning of 1914, end of 1915.
Okay.
A lot easier to do now because the book was no longer over 900 pages like it was. Now it was just a little less than 300. When Ezra told Joyce the
Is
news,
that a lot? Is that a little?
it's a shortish book.
Like a
It's a pretty normal book.
okay.
Yeah. When Ezra told Joyce the news that he was getting the story published for him, Joyce was thrilled, sure, but fuck, it wasn't finished. So Joyce quickly pushed out the final edition of A Portrait of the Artist as a Young Man, and with Ezra's help, found an American publisher called B.W. Hugeback. Huge. It's huge.
Huge. BW huge
It's-
back. You can just say huge back.
No.
That
It's
sounds hard, and I feel bad for you.
Huebsch.
That
Half
looks
of
like
them
a typo.
are-
That looks like a typo.
It's not.
Huge.
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 Hey, you want to take a look at my hubes?
Nice.
Ezra Pound got American publisher B.W. Huebsch to print it a year after it was finished being serialized in The Egoist. On December 29th, 1916, the story was on the streets to rave reviews. And now, without further ado, here's A Portrait of the Artist as a Young Man, and the story opens like this. Quote, "Once upon a time, and a very good time it was, there was a moo cow coming down along the road. And this moo cow that was coming down along the road met a nice little boy named Baby
Is there a
Tuco.
way you can say this that makes it not suck? Because I'm having a hard
His
time.
mother told him that story. His father looked at him through a glass. He had a hairy face. He was Baby Tuco. The moo cow came down the road where Betty Byrne lived.
Please stop.
She sold lemon plat."
I'm asking you to stop doing
Remember,
it like that.
one of the greatest books ever. Now, you see, the story changes writing styles based on what age our main character is. Stephen Daedalus
So he's
is
been, like-
at.
Wait, so pretty much he's
Well, when we first meet Stephen, he's just a young kid, probably around like 6. And Stephen talks of his joyous younger
actually,
days.
That's pretty fucking cool.
Huh?
That's actually pretty cool.
It is pretty neat. I mean, once you get past like that first chapter, yeah.
Yeah, it's, people not knowing that, just opening it up at first, being like, "What the fuck?"
And another poopy diaper. Okay.
I didn't know that poopy diaper.
He's singing and dancing with his family. He talks about the joys of cold bed sheets. But one day, Stephen says in front of his very Catholic family that he doesn't really that he likes the girl from next door, and someday they're gonna get married. But what poor Stephen doesn't seem to know, but the rest of his family does, is that their next door neighbors are Protestant.
Look, man, those people put lamb intestines on their dicks.
Well, rather than, gently telling Stephen that he can't be with the girl next door because, she's a heretic, the family yells at him so fiercely that he hides under the dining table for shelter.
That's a paddling.
His mom calms everyone down and reassures them that Stephen will apologize or birds will pluck out his fucking eyes. I remember.
Classic Catholic family.
When Stephen attends Clongowes Wood College as a boy.
Uh-oh. Wait.
What?
Isn't your wife's family Catholic?
Yeah.
Oopsies. Okay. Go on. I figure
they're not listening.
I figured they're all done listening by this point, so that's good.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
Like, oh shit, it's somebody who actually grew up Catholic. Quick, turn it off. This man's about to become evil. When Stephen attends Clongowes Wood College as a boy, the same place James Joyce attended at that age, he's immediately picked on by the other boys. It seems their main point of concern is Stephen's family's social status. In fact, the bullying eventually leads to an illness when Stephen gets pushed into some cold ditch water, getting him sick.
Wait, so they don't like him because he's poor? Is that the classic?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
Classic.
Your father's an alcoholic!
Tale is old as time.
As Stephen recovers for several days in the school infirmary, he learns to come to terms with his own death, which of course doesn't happen. At one point, the schoolboys are told to go look out for two of their classmates who committed some unknown crime and then fled the school grounds. On their own, the class begins to talk amongst themselves to try and figure out what crime they possibly could have committed. Being children, they come up with two conclusions. Either the boys ran off with some sacramental wine, or they were caught being gay. This story doesn't
Nobody
really...
thought maybe they saw him beaten off? Like,
What, together? Like...
yeah, that would be being gay.
that's a little gay. This story doesn't really go anywhere, but I thought it was kind of funny. Just like, they either, did they kill a man? No. They were caught beating it. Or they stole booze.
Look, I'm just saying, okay, if there's only one place where nobody's going to look at us beating it, it's not gay. Okay? That's the only place we can go, and we all have lunch at the same time. Okay? I'm not beating it because that guy's beating it. I'm beating it because this is the only place in time we can beat it.
I'm not going to leave him in solidarity, all right?
It's not gay.
We didn't look each other in the eyes.
We have
It's
15
fine.
minutes to beat it. There's only one place we can't. All right?
It was in the middle of the lunchroom. We didn't think the bell was going to
We
ring.
got our backs to each other. Yes, our backs are touching, but that's just so we can
I just
cover.
need to feel human warmth. What? You don't want to feel
What do you want me to
human
do?
warmth?
Lay on the dirt? They're gonna get suspicious when I come back with it all over my back. So we prop each other up and just start fucking spanking.
Yeah, we held hands with our one free hand. Big deal.
It's just for balance.
Don't want to fall over with all the
God
shaking
damn
at the
it, they're
table.
little boys. Oh, we did. Oh, I did.
No,
that.
it's okay. It's Catholic school. Everyone's heard this.
Meh.
Now, this whole next section of the book, as Stephen becomes a teenager, is actually kind of a fucking downer. Much like being a teenager usually is. Because the writing reflects how Stephen feels at the age he's currently at. We start to take notice of how his perception of people changes. When Stephen first talks about his uncle when he was just a little child, he seemed like a jovial old man. But as Stephen grows up, we find his uncle is actually kind of senile and very distant. The same goes for his dad. At first he's someone to be feared, but eventually Stephen finds his father to be boring and timid. It's just really interesting to see character development happen through another character's eyes, Speaking of Stephen's father, Stephen takes a trip with his dad to Cork, Ireland, because his dad has some work business up that way. And as the trip progresses, Stephen sees his dad get so wasted he can barely hold a conversation. He hits on barmaids. It's just generally being an all-around drunk. I'm feeling called out.
Oh, are you now? Wow, the bartender's being really nice. I bet that isn't her job. I bet she wants to fuck me.
It's on the... Oh, fuck, man. We both knew a guy whose mom tried to set him up with the bartender. Like, in the middle of her shift and shit was just like,
That's
my son
rough.
over there, I think he likes you. Ooh.
Okay, the only way to respond to that as the son at that point is to just never go back to the bar again.
Oh, yeah.
And then never go to another bar with your mother ever again.
Yeah,
I've never gone to a
why
bar
were
with
you
my
going to a
fucking
bar?
mom. That's not a bring your mom place.
That was maybe the first, like, hey, what the hell are you doing?
Like, bad vibes.
Oh, that's your son. Did he bring you here? Is he or DD? No, you're both drinking together. Ah.
I don't think any woman is going to be excited about your mom being your wingman.
I get real turned on by a guy who loves his mother.
It's really weird.
I'll tell you who it is later.
I mean, let's say they're fucking traveling the country just shooting their shot with that fucking particular tactic. They're going to hit one eventually. Probably in the Midwest. But
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I just vibe that.
No, I believe he was married once before in the South somewhere.
Wow, like before we knew him? Because
Yes. And now
Oh,
he's
yes.
now married to a different girl that he maybe knew in the middle of Oregon, which is just as bad as
I mean, when's
Texas.
the last time you talked to him? He's probably divorced again.
Fair. We should go
Go
Facebook stalk
on,
him.
go on.
Well, it's on this trip to Cork that Stephen truly feels himself become an individual. He doesn't want to be his father's son. He wants to be Stephen Daedalus. So while his dad does whatever, Stephen takes a walk out on town one night to mull over his thoughts and feelings, and does what any of us would in a time of inner turmoil. He bangs a prostitute. And what do you know? Stephen's into it.
I know.
So he continue. What? You know, sometimes you gotta cry out your feelings, and sometimes you prostitute them out.
I don't know.
It's outsourcing.
I don't want to bang when I'm down.
Well, clearly that's why you're still down.
Fair point.
Uh-huh. So,
To the internet.
well, Steven's into this, so he continues plowing through prostitutes throughout the rest of the school year. Doesn't seem like there's any real shortage of them either. But remember, Steven's going to Catholic school. So when the priest naturally begins his lesson on hell,
Christ.
he is
Does it get off on the fucking
Exactly.
risk? Jesus.
Well, when the priest
They
begins...
didn't have antibiotics like that back then.
Did you need them?
Yes.
I don't know. What do you get? A little sif? Whatever. Rots your mind and you die.
He wrote
Big
a
deal.
story about someone dying from Sif.
When the priest begins his lesson on hell, Stephen is very affected by it. He hits up confession, turns his head away from women when they walk by, and starts reading the Bible, with no better word to use, religiously.
Forgive me, Father, I have been having a time.
And how long has it been since your last confession? Fucking few parties ago, let me tell you.
Let's not mark it by the days, let's mark it by amount of prostitutes. And then you just fill in the blanks.
3 prostitutes? Oh shit, it's been since
3
lunch, huh?
prostitutes ago, how often do you get paid? So that's...
And although Stephen feels like the Bible doesn't make a whole lot of sense to him, he's pretty sure questioning the Bible is a sin, so he just doesn't. Stephen's devotion is soon noticed by a priest who asks him if he's ever thought of a godlier calling. And while thinking on the prospect of being a priest, Stephen Daedalus eventually thinks on, and becomes inspired by, his own last name. You see, Daedalus is the Greek myth of the man who created wings of feathers and wax for himself and his son Icarus.
Wax?
Yeah, wax and feathers.
Wax for what is that?
Because you need a plot point. Now you see,
Wax and what? No, what do they use that for? What is that?
it so that they can escape the Isle of Crete. Him and his son,
Okay,
Icarus.
do the wax fit
His son Icarus.
like
You know this.
like the Led Zeppelin cover?
The naked boy? Yeah.
Yeah, the dude who's like, oh, I ain't got a dick, fuck. Yeah, that one.
The one stretching his back.
It's like,
It just,
no dick.
Oh no! I don't have a face or a dick! Well, Icarus, of course, flew too close to the sun and melted the wax on his wings, plummeting him to the fucking earth. It was Daedalus
What
whose
you
sword...
were getting to it. Just say
What
you
do
were
you
getting to it. Never mind.
No, that's it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Daedalus... It's a short story. It was Daedalus who soared and escaped to Sicily. This will, in time, ultimately give Stephen the prospect of leaving home to follow his own dreams. As we see Stephen grow up to university age, he's a bit awkward. Brilliant as he may be, he is an odd motherfucker. His antisocial behavior causes him to miss classes, but typically he already knows the material. He teaches himself in his off time,
He's
you
too
know?
smart for school.
Goddamn right. Well, according to his father, he's, quote, a lazy bitch.
Written straight up. That's a quote.
Oh, lazy
rad.
bitch. Over time, we see Stephen lose faith, feeling that it won't be long before he quits school and religion altogether in exchange for his artistic pursuits. The last part of the book acts as Stephen's diary and works almost as an epilogue. It's here that he talks of going on a date with a girl he admires, his mother's growing concern over his loss of faith, and even records a few dreams. The novel ends with Stephen making a prayer to his own namesake, Daedalus. Quote, "Old father, old artificer, stand me now and ever in good stead." Now, as far as the themes go, there's a huge one for language. Of course, the obvious is that as Stephen grows, so does his language, but the story is written in the third person anyway, so it should render the early goo goo gaga language redundant, yet there it is. There are also no quotation marks in the whole fucking book. This is something that Joyce became known for. But the fact that you don't always know when a character is saying something versus thinking it, versus quoting some obscure philosophy or mythology, the events of the book become almost an interpretation.
Is that kind of like Cormac McCarthy? Like,
Yeah, actually, yeah.
okay.
Wow, look at you. Now,
No, I just really liked all that shit.
well, it definitely says something as far as stream of consciousness goes. Like, even though there's a narrator, you could say that the narrator is narrating in third person in Stephen's head. Like, you know, when you walk down the street and it goes, "Oh, there goes Caleb," just fucking thinking he's hot shit, you know? It's like, that's... you could interpret it as all in Stephen Daedalus's head. But you could also interpret this a shitload of different ways.
I do like the progression of
The language.
yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. I do like that. And that's the thing that
I mean,
we're
I have
going to
not
find
read
out.
it. Maybe it sucks. Maybe you're lying to me. But
You don't need to.
maybe you're.
But that's what I will say is, like, for James Joyce in particular, he really fucking, like, stepped up the game as far as, like, literature goes in just a very quick span of time. And yet there was nobody really before him who, like, kind of led to this point. He just kind of did it on his own and said, "Fuck you, make it happen," and it happened. So, I mean, hey,
We don't need the quotation marks. They know when
it's not
going to
work for everyone, though. Let me just reiterate that. Not everyone who's experimental is going to end up being the next fucking James Joyce. Maybe your shit sucks.
A lot of times when you do something outside the box, it's because somebody already decided and found out that was fucking stupid.
Dubliners, mostly boring. And there's this part in the book when Stephen gets to university that he mentions skipping Irish class. As Stephen puts it, "English will always be for me an acquired speech. I have not made or accepted its words. My voice holds them at bay." Yet, when he uses an Irish word in conversation to his British headmaster, the guy just draws blanks. Like, here he is making the language a part of the curriculum, but he doesn't himself understand it. This actually jumps right into another theme. Irish independence. I mean, don't you find it odd that there's an Irish class in a university based in Ireland being taught to a bunch of Irish kids, as if it should be treated like it's a second language under English? There's one point when Stephen comes home from
That's dumb.
Yeah, well, and it's truth, too. There's one point where Stephen comes home from Clongowes Wood College for Christmas, and there's a huge fight between Stephen's dad and his governess, who used to be a nun, about whether you should listen to your politician or to your priest when it comes to making governmental decisions. His dad thinks you should listen to the Irish politicians, while the governess thinks you should follow the priests, men who were sent to Ireland from Britain and giving out sermons about how great it is now that the British are here to take care of all your little Irish worries for you. There's also a point in the story where Stephen is doing like a spelling bee or something as a kid, and he notices his English opponents wearing red and white roses on their lapels, signifying British rule, and Stephen wonders if there could ever be such a thing as a green rose, meaning hope for Irish independence. Because at the end of the day, this is still, you know, a book that is going to
Yeah,
be taught
no.
in English classes forever.
I don't know enough about that whole ongoing issue, so I'm just gonna go ahead and not.
Yeah.
I don't know enough to joke. Like, there's no way I'm not gonna
Ha
sound
ha,
like an
potato
ass.
and alcoholism. Ha ha. Caleb, they're dead.
Okay, damn, all right. Like,
Well, upon the release of A Portrait of the Artist as a Young Man, people loved it. Not necessarily because it was a thrilling read. It's not. But because it was finally a break away from all this romanticist writing everyone was doing. This was true modernist literature. Forget romance. We're following a teenage boy. He just wants to fuck. And people don't walk around talking like poets. They're telling their friends to go fuck themselves, just like real people.
what a bust.
And not just that, but Portrait of the Artist also took out any classical styles of writing to it. No quotation marks, 300 pages but only 5 chapters, no central plot. This felt truly like the first of its kind. But not everyone welcomes so strange a concept. Indeed, James Joyce's biggest critic was probably his own partner, Nora Barnacle, who called his writing obscure and lacking in sense. She's not completely wrong.
Dude, just make money. Please.
But regardless of Nora's indifferences to his work, Joyce quickly began work on what would become his magnum opus while finishing Portrait of the Artist. This, of course, was Ulysses. Starting his work in 1914, Joyce had to take a little break from writing his newest work due to World War I. In 1915, most of Joyce's students were drafted for the war. So with this, James and Nora moved from Trieste, Italy, back to Zurich, Switzerland. It was around this time that James began having problems with his left eye. Not knowing exactly what the issue was, Joyce would have a constant battle with his vision for the rest of his life. It was during this time that one of his doctors suggested not wearing glasses at all, so his eyesight would get stronger on its own rather than relying
keep
on
drinking
a crutch.
alcohol.
And because of this, Joyce wrote parts of Ulysses on large white sheets of paper with crayons so he could see what the fuck he was writing. At some point, the Joyces moved to Paris, where James would finalize the book in 1921. And on next episode, we will begin what is largely regarded as the greatest work ever written, Ulysses, by James Joyce.
Will there be skeletons?
I'm gonna...
What you gonna do?
Yes.
Really?
I can't threaten you. Look at me. This is what the last few episodes have been building up to, though. I hope you remember your Homer, because this is all about the Odyssey.
I can just listen to it again.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
Wait a second. Hang on. I got it. My sources today: Dubliners by James Joyce, Dover Thrift Editions, 1991. A Portrait of the Artist as a Young Man by James Joyce, Penguin Books, 2003. You can visit us on CalebCan'tRead.com. You can follow us on Caleb Can't Read at Twitter.
All the places in which there are podcasts. You can listen. You can message us and stuff if you feel like it.
You can look up our sources on the Caleb Can't Read sources page.
You can call Jordan on his
getting the hang of
bullshit.
this. Yeah, you can email us at calebcan'tread@gmail.com. And still waiting on dick pics.
Still waiting on dick
Still
pics.
waiting on dick pics.